By now, you've heard many tragic stories of different divers exploring different caves, right? But today we take things a little more intense into one of the deadliest caves. While the journey starts with a high-octane thrilling dive into the deep waters with the hopes of finding something new, it turns into a tragic plunge into the abyss. Many courageous individuals have been lured by the mystery of this cave, and each one of them disappears into the darkness of the cave forever. None of them come back alive. This is Fatal Tragedies, with a story of the world's most perilous cave known to humankind, the Eagle's Nest Cave. Infamous for its multitude of tragic incidents. But before we do a deep dive, I know what you're thinking. What does this cave look like? Eagle's Nest Cave ranks among the top 10 most perilous cave systems globally, renowned for its treacherously narrow and alluring underwater passages. Situated in the remote wilderness of the pines of Chesahowitzka Wildlife Management Area in west central Florida, Eagle's Nest Sink has claimed the lives of 13 divers since 1981. Above the surface, it appears as a simple sinkhole beneath murky waters, but below lies a complex cave system shaped like a sink with a daunting deep drain plunging into the Earth's crust. Despite its modest depth of approximately 300 feet, underwater conditions make every foot crucial, often determining the difference between life and death. Between 1999 and 2003, Eagle's Nest Sink was closed to the public due to safety concerns, reflecting its reputation as a challenging environment unfit for inexperienced divers. Pressure from diving enthusiasts eventually led Florida to reopen the site, though the state had previously considered banning cave diving altogether due to rising fatalities nationwide, especially in Florida, a hotspot for the sport. The cave's narrow passages present a formidable challenge for divers, often requiring them to squeeze tightly to navigate through the constricted entrances. Once inside, the cave system reveals expansive and stunning chambers like the ballroom, the super room, and the pit. These large, beautiful spaces contrast sharply with the perilous nature of the environment. It's a place of dangerous beauty, where its grandeur attracts explorers despite the risks that it holds. And this is what attracted the three best friends, Chris Rittenmeyer, Patrick Peacock, and Justin Blakely, who decided to test their skills. But what began as a thrilling underwater adventure ended in absolute tragedy. Only one made it back to their meeting spot, but not without serious consequences. On Saturday, October 15, 2016, the three friends ventured into the Eagle's Nest sinkhole in Hernando County, Florida. Experienced cave divers Chris Rittenmeyer and Patrick Peacock, along with their friend Justin Blakely, aimed to explore the underwater cavern. The trio descended to a depth of 50 feet to reach the cave's entrance. Inside, they found a network of tunnels stretching over a mile long and reaching depths of more than 300 feet below the surface, teeming with diverse marine life. Despite safety concerns and local efforts to close the cave due to its dangerous nature, the divers continued. Officials had placed warning signs along the wooded path leading to the site, and another at the cave's underwater entrance featuring a grim reaper. The three friends, however, chose to ignore these warnings. The experienced divers were well prepared and fully aware of the risks. However, despite their efforts, their thrilling underwater adventure soon became a nightmare. The day before, Rittenmeyer and Peacock had visited the site to set up safety measures. They placed a series of backup diving cylinders known as bailout bottles along the tunnel walls of the Eagle Nest Cave. They were positioned at depths of 20 feet, 70 feet, and 120 feet, but no deeper. For those unaware, bailout bottles are filled with gas mixes adjusted for specific depths, typically containing varying concentrations of oxygen, nitrogen, and sometimes helium, depending on the depth. First, the divers swam to the right, heading down the upstream tunnel. Their first stop was the Crevice Cave. From there, they entered their first chamber, Randy's room, where the walls were adorned with multicolored layers of clay formed over thousands of years. Next, they reached the largest room in Eagle's Nest, aptly named the Super Room, said to be the size of an aircraft hangar. But Peacock and Rittenmeyer craved a greater challenge. They turned towards the downstream tunnel, the opposite direction. Blakely, the most inexperienced diver, was to stay closer to the surface, mindful of Eagle's Nest's perilous reputation. They had agreed on a meeting point near the surface to regroup if things went awry and planned to meet there at 3 p.m. once they concluded their dive. And yet, their vast experience was about to be tested to the limit. Equipped with underwater scooters, backup scooters, and closed-circuit rebreathers, they were ready for an extended dive. Unlike open-circuit systems that release exhaled gas into the water, CCRs recycle exhaled gas, filtering out carbon dioxide and adjusting the gas mixture automatically to maintain a safe partial pressure of oxygen. This technology allowed for longer dive times and minimized sediment disturbance, ensuring better visibility underwater. As they ventured deeper into the downstream tunnel, they checked their diving computer for current depth and time. It was now 2 p.m., and they had just 1 hour before they needed to return to the meeting point and regroup with Blakely. The clock was ticking, and the depths of the Eagle's Nest held their fate in a delicate balance. With only an hour to spare, Rittenmeyer and Peacock planned to traverse John's Pocket, followed by Jim's room, the Half Moon room, and finally, at the very end of the tunnel, the Room of Dreams. But before they could continue, they had to squeeze through one of the narrowest and deepest parts of the entire cave system, a passageway called the Pit. Reaching a depth of 310 feet, the Pit is one of the deepest sections of any underwater cave in the United States. Its low visibility and myriad pathways added to the complexity. Rittenmeyer and Peacock arrived at the narrow passage 43 minutes after first entering the water. As they began to squeeze their way through, they were now at a depth of about 260 feet. One after the other, they entered the passage. However, 3 minutes later, unable to proceed further, they turned around and came back out. They spent 6 minutes floating outside the entrance, seemingly planning their next move. Then, determined, they re-entered the passage for a second time. This time, one of them successfully made it through while the other, either Rittenmeyer or Peacock, failed again. The diver who made it through turned around and headed back into the passage from the other direction, desperate to find his friend. At this point, time was running out, and the fate of both divers hung in the balance as they navigated the treacherous depths of the pit. Suddenly, disaster struck. Peacock quickly started removing his diving equipment, while Rittenmeyer lost his headlight, plunging him into darkness. He failed to deploy any backup lights, leaving him blind in the underwater abyss. Peacock, now almost gearless, was left with just his mask, suit, and fins. At 61 minutes into their dive, one of the divers abandoned his functional rebreather and a full personal bailout bottle. Despite having remaining oxygen in his rebreather, his onboard dilutant bottle, used to dilute the oxygen in the rebreather's breathing loop, was empty. In desperation, he resorted to using his inflation bottle for emergency air. However, the bottle was meant for buoyancy control and was not suitable for breathing at that depth. With the rendezvous time closing in, Blakely started heading towards the meeting point. It was now 3 p.m., and after waiting several minutes, Peacock and Rittenmeyer still hadn't returned. Blakely swam up to the surface and then back down to check again, but there was still no sign of them. He repeated this process over and over again for several hours. By 6 p.m., 3 hours after they were supposed to meet, he decided to call for help. The Hernando County Sheriff's Office received a call from a distressed diver who'd lost contact with his 2 diving partners. Rescuers were shocked to learn where the call was coming from. Since 1981, Eagle's Nest had claimed the lives of at least 10 divers. Authorities traveled across miles of dirt roads through the wildlife management area, which could only be traversed with 4-wheel drive vehicles. As daylight faded quickly, they found Justin Blakely at the surface, along with his diving gear, anxiously awaiting help. Water. They began their search in the upstream tunnel, only to find the untouched staged bailout bottles. After hours of searching, they resurfaced at 3:30 a.m., having scoured the upstream tunnel and the Lockwood Tunnel, which runs perpendicular to the downstream tunnel, but found no signs of the missing divers. At 3:45 a.m., a second search team entered the water. This team consisted of Ted McCoy, an Olympic gold medalist diver, and AJ Gonzalez, a firefighter and paramedic. They headed into the part of Eagle's Nest that the previous team hadn't explored yet, the downstream tunnel. Almost immediately, they made a grim discovery. Patrick Peacock and Chris Rittenmeyer's bodies were found floating near each other on the exit side of the pit. According to Florida law, the discovery had to be treated as a crime scene. McCoy and Gonzalez spent the next 45 minutes meticulously analyzing the scene and recording data before returning to the surface. As dawn broke, news crews surrounded Eagle's Nest, and rescue workers faced the daunting task of recovering the two bodies while fending off reporters desperate to uncover what had happened. Authorities didn't yet have an answer. They hoped that by recovering the bodies and examining the evidence, they could unravel the mystery. But what they would uncover would ultimately raise more questions. The recovery operation was dangerous and painstaking. The hours stretched on, filled with tension and sorrow. Finally, both Rittenmeyer and Peacock were extracted from the sinkhole. Pronounced dead at the scene, their bodies were transported to the Hernando County Coroner's Office. As medical examiners worked to determine the cause of death, rescue divers returned to the sinkhole to gather evidence. Their primary focus was on locating the missing gear, which could provide crucial insights into what went wrong. With each descent into the pit, rescue divers faced the same peril that claimed Patrick Peacock and Chris Rittenmeyer. Despite the risks, they managed to retrieve all of the equipment discarded by the two divers, scattered across the pit floor. Experts like John Burnett and Ted McCoy eagerly inspected the gear, ready to identify any potential issues. Yet, after a meticulous examination, not a single piece of faulty equipment was found. Everything was in proper working order at the time of Peacock and Rittenmeyer's deaths. Remarkably, the expert consensus even suggested that the pair had been exceptionally well prepared for Eagle's Nest. In search of answers, they reached out to scuba instructor Ken Sallet, who analyzed the data from the dive computer. He provided a detailed account of Peacock and Rittenmeyer's movements inside the cave. Yet even this comprehensive overview failed to yield any substantial explanation. Similarly, the Hernando County Coroner's Office couldn't uncover much. Both Rittenmeyer and Peacock were determined to have drowned, yet medical examinations failed to reveal any clues regarding the how or why of their deaths. The story garnered considerable attention in the local press and sparked widespread discussion on diving forums. Enthusiasts from around the globe shared their theories on how two highly experienced divers, equipped with fully functional gear and taking all necessary precautions, could still have ended up dead at the bottom of Eagle's Nest. The debate may persist for years. In their 2016 accident records, the National Speleological Society officially listed the cause as unknown. Chairman Joe Citelli concluded the report with the statement, "Sometimes bad things happen to good people for no apparent reason." So what do you think was the cause? Fear, paranoia, Cthulhu? Shout off in the comments down below. Now, if you thought that story was sad, then let's dive into our next one. Father that loses a loved one. On a Christmas morning in 2014, Darren Spivey, a 35-year-old roofer from Brooksville, set out for a dive at Eagle's Nest with his 15-year-old son, Dylan Sanchez. It was a special occasion as they had received new dive equipment as presents and were eager to try it out. Darren had a lifelong passion for diving, starting from his childhood days when he would gather friends for weekend swims. While he was a certified diver capable of depths of up to 130 feet with regular air tanks, cave diving required specialized training and equipment, which he hadn't pursued despite encouragement from experienced divers like Robert Brooks. 6 months prior, Darren had met Robert Brooks, who emphasized the importance of cave certification. Despite loaning him equipment and urging him to take a course, Darren had postponed it. His son, Dylan, also shared his father's enthusiasm for diving and was preparing diligently for his certification, immersed in dive manuals and drills set by his father. According to family members, Darren and Dylan had dived at Eagle's Nest several times before and were well aware of its dangers. Safety was always their top priority, emphasized by Darren's fiancée, Holly King, who described him as deeply devoted to his family and willing to take every precaution for their safety. Tragically, despite their experience and careful preparations, the Christmas dive would end in heartbreak. The serene beauty of Eagle's Nest, a place that they loved and respected, became the backdrop to a devastating loss that left their loved ones grappling with grief and unanswered questions. It all began as a normal day. Darren and Dylan left home at 7 a.m. with excitement to test their new diving equipment at Buford Springs. Disappointed to find it flooded, they decided to drive down to Eagle's Nest sinkhole instead. Arriving at around 11 a.m., they parked near a wooden dock adorned with warning signs marking the treacherous dive ahead. Despite the warnings, Darren and his son suited up in scuba gear and walked across the dock to the water's edge. They plunged in, swimming leisurely until they reached the entrance room of Eagle's Nest, known as the Ballroom, a vast cavern plunging to depths of about 200 feet. Darren assured Robert Brooks, his mentor, that they would remain in the ballroom rather than venture into the narrower tunnels beyond. Robert cautioned that even the ballroom, with its dark corners and deceptive caves below, posed risks to those without proper cave diving training. Past the warning signs, Darren and Dylan moved beyond the entrance, following a narrow, descending tunnel that stretched deep into the earth. Typically, divers would use a guideline to navigate this narrow passage, crucial in the murky waters where sunlight quickly vanishes. After entering the main ballroom, Darren and Dylan continued their dive without incident initially. However, as they ventured deeper into the cavern, the situation took a turn for the worse. Aware that their oxygen supply wouldn't last long at such depths, they knew they would need about an hour to safely decompress during their ascent, preventing decompression sickness by slowly rising to the surface to avoid air bubbles forming in their blood. Reflecting on the tragedy later, Robert Brooks lamented Darren's decision to push beyond his training, a warning he had once voiced. "One day, they'll call me to come get you," he had forewarned. Despite Darren's meticulous preparation of their gear, their inexperience in Eagle's Nest proved to be their undoing. They were doomed from the start, Brooks mournfully acknowledged. As their dive gauges ominously dropped to 230 feet, signs of trouble became evident. Without the proper gas mixture for deep dives, they succumbed to nitrogen narcosis, a disorienting condition exacerbated by the high-pressure environment. It clouded their judgment, making it difficult to accurately gauge time and air consumption. Dylan, first to exhaust his air supply, signaled his dwindling gauge to his father amidst the dim, murky depths. In a desperate act of paternal love, Darren shared his regulator, sacrificing his own dwindling supply to save his son. But as their air ran out, panic set in. Lost without the guideline, they struggled to find their way back to safety. Weakened by oxygen deprivation, Darren lost consciousness, silently sinking to the cave floor. Dylan, taking his final, fleeting breath, attempted a desperate ascent, propelled by his water wings. In the chaos, the guideline slipped from their grasp, leaving Dylan disoriented and unable to find the exit in the dark labyrinth. As hours passed without any word from Darren or Dylan, Holly, Darren's fiancée, grew increasingly worried. With the sun setting, she decided to drive to Eagle's Nest herself to search for them. Darren had texted her just before they entered the water, informing her of their dive location. Upon arriving, Holly found Darren's car near the dock, but no sign of them. Fearing the worst, she made the difficult decision to call the authorities for help. Around 7:30 p.m., with growing concern and no contact from Darren and Dylan, Holly reached out to the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, upon learning of the missing divers, Brooks mobilized 2 certified cave divers to aid in the search. Law enforcement responded swiftly, deploying recovery divers trained specifically for such emergencies into Eagle's Nest, prepared for the possibility that Darren and Dylan had encountered difficulties. Following the guideline into the ballroom through the narrow passage, the divers advanced cautiously, their flashlights probing the darkness. They halted just outside the passage, scanning the ceiling where divers often become trapped near the entrance to other underwater caves. Between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., at a depth of 67 feet, one of the divers made a grim discovery. Dylan's lifeless body floating against the ceiling of the ballroom. Further into the cavern, at a depth of 127 feet, Darren's body was found on a large mound on the ballroom floor. Brooks later revealed that their dive computers and air gauges indicated both had descended to 233 feet and had depleted their air supply. Tragically, father and son succumbed to the depths of Eagle's Nest on Christmas Day. Their deaths were ruled accidental drowning by authorities. And finally, on September 11, 2005, Judi Bedard and her partner, Rudy Banks, embarked on an exhilarating journey into the depths of Eagle's Nest Sinkhole's cave system. Judi, a 48-year-old seasoned cave diver and registered nurse at Tampa General Hospital, was no stranger to underwater exploration. Her dive adventures with friends in the past had prepared her well for such expeditions. The day unfolded as they entered the water at 4:30 p.m., eager to explore the mysterious depths beneath. With a deliberate descent, they immersed themselves into the underwater labyrinth. Judi, equipped with initially an oxygen-only tank for the shallow depths, transitioned smoothly to nitrox at 30 feet. Nitrox, a blend of oxygen and nitrogen, was essential for optimizing gas mixtures at varying depths, ensuring safety and efficiency. As they delved deeper, reaching 130 feet, the dive took an unexpected turn. Technical glitches plagued Judi's equipment, prompting a swift switch to her primary trimix tank. Trimix, a specialized mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium, was crucial for deeper dives, mitigating the risks associated with high-pressure environments. Despite the challenges, Judi and Rudy pressed on, navigating the intricate passageways with the skill and determination of seasoned divers. Each turn brought new wonders and challenges, testing their expertise and equipment to the limit. Yet, the depths held unforeseen obstacles. Technical difficulties persisted, complicating their descent further. Judi's quick decision to switch to trimix underscored her preparedness and adaptability in the face of adversity, traits that defined her as a diver. Unfortunately, the primary tank they relied on didn't have the correct mix of gases necessary for the depths they were navigating. Rudy noticed the issue, and Judi swiftly switched back to her nitrox tank. However, the consequences of the incorrect gas mixture had already taken their toll. With compromised gas mixes, they began their ascent towards the surface. In cave diving, ascent must be gradual to prevent decompression sickness, commonly known as the bends. Rapid ascents can also lead to potentially fatal conditions like gas embolism, where bubbles or clots obstruct blood circulation. Time became their enemy, as they needed to manage a slow and controlled decompression. Due to the gas mix-up in her primary tank, Judi found herself breathing in excess of helium and insufficient oxygen, exacerbating their already precarious situation. As they ascended to 100 feet, Judi's condition worsened. The incorrect gas mixture had left her breathing excessive helium and nearly devoid of oxygen. By the time they reached the 60-foot mark from the surface, Judi lost consciousness. Rudy faced a dire dilemma. With Judi in critical condition and still a significant distance from safety, he had to choose between two grim options. A rapid ascent risked worsening Judi's already severe condition, potentially leading to dangerous decompression sickness. On the other hand, a slow ascent meant that Judi would continue to suffer from oxygen deprivation, likely resulting in her death within the cave. Amidst the uncertainty, Rudy opted for the faster ascent, clinging to the hope that managing the decompression sickness would give Judi a chance, however slim, of survival outside of the cave's depths. Rudy quickly ascended with Judi to the surface, where he desperately needed help to resuscitate her. Greg Stanton, a former diving safety officer at Florida State University, and his friend James Gary, a member of the University of South Florida's Diving Control Board, responded swiftly after concluding their dives. Greg lamented the challenges that arose from the rapid ascent, leading to serious injuries, including arterial gas embolisms for Judi. Upon surfacing, Judi was unresponsive, her eyes open with blood and foam emanating from her mouth. James halted Dan Pelland, a Spring Hill resident arriving at Eagle's Nest for photography, and used his phone to call 911. Together with Pelland, James assisted Rudy in performing CPR urgently needed to revive Judi, whose heart responded 15 to 20 minutes into the procedure. Although her breathing was restored, Judi remained unconscious and in dire need of immediate medical attention, which was hindered by the remote and challenging location of Eagle's Nest sinkhole. Due to inadequate supplies and transportation difficulties, the medical team had to improvise, transporting Judi in a sport utility vehicle without an IV drip to meet a waiting ambulance and helicopter support at a forest clearing nearby. Stephen Farmer, a fish and wildlife investigator, later corroborated Greg and James' assessments, attributing Judi's severe injuries to poorly mixed tri-mix tanks, improper gas analysis, and a closed isolation valve between tanks that Judi overlooked checking before diving. Transported to Tampa General Hospital for extensive rehabilitation, Judi didn't regain full consciousness until November, 2 months after the incident. Recounting her ordeal, Judi recalled waking up unable to move, her legs weakened and fitted with a tracheotomy tube. She battled cardiac arrests, respiratory issues, organ complications, cognitive decline, and post-traumatic amnesia during her hospitalization. Despite the severe trauma, Judi defied expectations, undergoing months of intense therapy. Initially reliant on assistance for basic movements and experiencing breathlessness after minimal exertion, she made remarkable progress. Within 5 weeks, Judi triumphantly walked over 300 feet, earning praise from medical professionals who called her recovery miraculous. Returning to work at Tampa General in June 2007, initially in the operating room before transitioning to medical records, Judi prioritized diving and work-life balance. Overcoming initial anxieties, she resumed exploring underwater caves, including Peacock Springs in North Florida, embodying a spirit of adventure and determination that defined her journey back to health and her beloved underwater pursuits. So which of these 3 stories did you find the most disturbing? Make sure you let me know in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in our next video.